Finally, we get to one of the more difficult topics, these verbs called modals. They're also called helping verbs, and they're a type of auxiliary verb, and they add information to the main verb. I've mentioned earlier would and might or may, but let's really go into these because it's worth trying to understand what these kind of words are doing. So let me start by looking at this chart. This is the frequency of modal verbs in academic journals based on that One Health English corpus. And it's not a coincidence that the first and most dominant words are not strong words. May, can, and could represent, more than 2/3 of all uses of modal verbs in written articles. The strongest words are least represented: must, should, and will. This is because academic journals like these cannot say, this will prove the existence of, or our data show that you must accept the mechanism. You don't talk that way as a scientist, right? This actually informs the way that you should think about formal language as well, because in an academic article, you are trying to be polite, yet insisting that you have something important to say. The best way for people to hear that is through a polite medium. That's what these words help you to do. Okay, I'm going to just read from here. In general, modals modify the strength of the main verb's truth. It's kind of like a probability. If I say, it might rain tomorrow, that is not as strong as saying, it will probably rain tomorrow, which is very strong. Somewhere in the middle is, it should rain tomorrow, but it's possible that it won't. Things like that. But they are complicated words because that's not the only function. They can also be used to indicate ability, give advice, make predictions, and make requests. And it is in all of these capacities that you might use them in formal language. Okay, starting with the probability, which is, I think, the most common use, at least for our lesson today. I think hippos can swim. I think they can swim. Wait, do they walk on the bottom of the lake? Or can they actually kind of swim like an elephant can swim? Gosh, I guess I'm not sure. So that's like a probability type of thing. But if I talk about myself, hopefully I do know my own self. And if I say, I can swim, it's not a probability statement. It's a fact, either, yes, I can, I have that ability, or no, I can't. There's a request form. Can I swim today? This form we won't find in academic journals, but we did see it in the previous module where if you want to ask for advice, for example, you don't say, send me that report. Say, can you send me that report, please? It's just a lot nicer way to request something. Advice, you can swim at Tene Pool. It's nice. Now there's an overlap. Of course, this is also about ability. You don't need my permission to go swim at Tene Pool. It's open to the public if you pay some money. So you have that ability. However, I have the knowledge that I'm trying to pass on to you. So in that sense, it's advice. It's hard to say exactly where advice starts and stops and the ability starts and stops. It's one reason that makes these words a little bit hard to use. Finally, prediction. I'm sure you can swim tomorrow. Yeah, I know that it's the pandemic, but I'm sure it's open tomorrow. Wait, is it? I'm sorry, it might not be open. You better check the website. Okay, so there's just at least these 5 different ways to use these modals. And another teacher might tell you that there's more. But that's enough for us. And in fact, we're not going to be looking at requests in this section. So just think about the previous module if you want to think about that. Let's go through. This is meant to be an overview, and we'll go into some more detail on another document, but I have taken some characteristic phrases from journal articles, and I've listed the section which it comes from. And I am attempting to label each of these based on what we talked about above. If you read this phrase, these strains may have diverged 3 months ago, 5 years ago, something like that. This is a probability, isn't it? It's not about advice. You're not saying, hey, strains, you may diverge back then. It's not like that. It's not a prediction because this is the past tense. If you wanted to predict, you of course could. And if you said, the strains of COVID may diverge in the coming months. So please also pay attention to the grammar. This is the present perfect, and as I said earlier, you need to be accurate with your grammar to achieve good formal speech. It's something to work on if you want to be confident and show comfortability to your listener. Next one, cellular mechanisms that may contribute to this are blah, blah, blah. I read this as probability again, although you might read it as ability. Again, the overlap is not so clear. Rather, the division is not so clear, and there's a lot of overlap. Look at this next one. These may be more important than blah, blah, blah. Well, if you start to talk about importance, well, there's a certain amount of your judgment in there, isn't it? So that's why it's not just probability, but it's also advice. When you talk about something that may be important, you're actually saying to the listener, I think that you should believe this is important. There's advice going in there along with the probability, indicating they can be used to assess. Okay, so in the case of indicating, you might argue that indicate is a type of probability. But for what we're investigating right now, just this can be used, this is just about ability, just like I can swim. These findings can provide, useful tools for future investigations. So that is a type of an ability. These findings have the ability to help you. It's also a prediction. It's saying future studies will be benefited by these findings. And if you wanted to add a third, perhaps it's even advice by saying, I believe you should take my findings and use them for your investigation. So please don't think that I have the perfect answers here. This is just my feeling, and I want you to go through and fill out the rest of the list with what you think, and we're going to compare those with your group and see if you get the right answers or not. Okay, so that's your classwork on these. Please read through these and write, do you think it's a probability, ability, advice, or prediction, or is it a combination of two or more of those? Okay, please take a look at that. That's what I wanted to say for overview of these words. Let me maybe say one more thing, and this is a little bit technical, but can is the present tense and could is the past tense. As a general rule, the past tense is more polite and less likely. So it's not exactly agreed upon, but in general, can is perhaps more likely than could, and will is more likely than would. Now, may and might are strange ones, and I, off the top of my head, forgot which one is the past tense. One of them is present and one of them is past. As far as I can tell, they're almost exactly the same, and as you can tell from the data, research articles use may way more than might, so I would say just choose the one that's more comfortable for you. The meaning's basically the same. Okay, let's get into some more detail. I've got some more data on modal verbs, and I've got another little bit of an introduction here that comes from a slightly different angle, but let's read it again. Modals are helping verbs which attach to a main verb to to change the degree of the main verb. Compare number 1, she likes ramen, with number 2, she may like ramen. Now, case 1 is said with complete certainty, while in case 2, the speaker expresses a lack of confidence in their statement. She may like ramen, like, I think she does. I mean, she's Japanese, so yeah, she probably likes ramen, but I'm not sure. Now again, the modals are confusing, so you've got to keep in mind that sometimes speakers express a lack of certainty to be polite or to show humility, as in the following situation. Let's imagine A doesn't know about her, but B does know about her. So A says, let's take her somewhere for her birthday. Should we go to ramen or soup curry? Now B, to be polite to A, says, she may like ramen. Now actually, she hates soup curry. Doesn't A know that? Okay, no. But I should be polite if I said to A, of course not soup curry. She doesn't like that. We'll go to ramen. To be polite, you say, she may like ramen. Okay, so there's many factors that make these words a little bit complicated to use, yet necessary for formal and polite language. Looking at some more data from the One Health English corpus, I want to show you which section of the journals each word is used in. So, it may not be surprising, based on what I've said earlier, that the discussion and the introduction have the highest frequency of use of these words. It's a little bit confusing, this data, but total frequency is certainly easy to understand. In all of my data, we have 2,654 uses of occurrences of the word may. And the word can and cannot are bundled here because there is no example of couldn't or can't. And this is the total rank in terms of overall frequency of these words. So the word may is the 59th most frequent word in all of the journal articles. It's pretty high. I mean, in fact, all three of these top 3 are in the top 100 words. So it indicates that you really can't avoid these words. You've got to use them. And let me take the case of, say, will, total frequency of 519, not so low in the total rank. It means will is used in almost every article. There's 650 articles, so the majority of articles use will once, and also the majority use should at least once. That's what that means. These numbers are a normalized figure. Okay, so that's the frequency per 10,000 words. Let's not worry about that too much. I just wanted to make the data clean so we could get these percentages. Okay, materials section doesn't use modals much at all. Well, the results is somewhere in the middle. Okay, based on what I've said, I'd like to turn over some classwork to you. Here's question number 1. Why are modals more highly associated with discussion and introduction than results and materials? It's totally okay to guess. And number 2, can you imagine a way to use should in a scientific paper? And how about must? Please write your answers on this document and repost it to the Google Drive. This is also your classwork. For each of the following, rate the degree of certainty of the author or speaker on the following scale, where 1 is very uncertain and 5 is very certain. I'll do number 1 with you. It says, both owner-reported and veterinary-diagnosed skin symptoms are often related to allergy. But these skin symptoms can also be caused by parasites, behavioral or stress-induced scratching and licking, or even idiopathic, I don't know that word, or hypothyroidism. What do you think? These skin symptoms can also be caused by parasites. I think it's quite certain, or even very certain. So in this case, can is more about ability rather than probability. So it's just saying that it's often allergy, but it's completely possible to be parasites or something else. So in fact, probably a 5 is the best answer here, but it depends on your point of view. I think 4 or 5 are both correct answers here. So with that in mind, please consider that there's probably no perfect answer to any of these, and I'm just asking you to turn on your brain and try to think, what is the degree of certainty of each of the people here? And then take a look at the bonus, which I actually think is an example of poor writing, but it's still kind of good to take a look at. So again, put your answers in the Google Drive document, and we'll discuss this more next week.